California, which is an hour east of LA. That's my home. I'm very attached to it. I'm very connected to it, even though I haven't lived there since I was, 18 years old. So my parents both live there. Actually, something that I often say to connote our roots in Riverside is that my parents and I and my middle sister were all born at the same hospital, which is one block from my mom's current house. So we are very rooted in Riverside. So my mom's parents are both immigrants. One is from Switzerland, and the other was from Canada. She's white, and then my dad, who's black, his family came from Tulsa after the Tulsa Race Massacre and settled in first LA and then Riverside. And so both my parents are still in Riverside, and then my sisters both live in California as well. I'm the only one who's out here on the East Coast, but I'm okay with it.
Okay. So your parents have roots in sounds like Switzerland and then Tulsa, Oklahoma area. Any other areas in the US?
So my dad believes that our ancestors were enslaved in Mississippi.
Mhm.
There are Simses with one M, which is how we spell it. A lot of people here in Virginia whose last name is Sims spell it with two M's, which my dad likes to say those are the rich Simses. They could afford an extra M. We're the broke Simses. We could only afford one M. He likes to say that a lot. So we believe that our ancestors were enslaved in Mississippi, but I have not been able to visit the place that we think that they were enslaved before. I have spent some time in my grandmother's hometown in Switzerland, so I've been able to go there, but not to the plantations that we might have come from.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and then given that too, your name, Gayla, what's the story behind your name?
So it's very funny because I have a brand new nephew, and my brother-in-law is Yoruba from Nigeria. So we had a naming ceremony today where
Oh,
each of us gave our little boy his a name from us. So he has 17 names. I only have, first, middle, and last. My name is a combination of my grandmother's names. My mom's mom is Gail, Gail. And then my dad's mom was Alberta. So my mom just threw an A on Gail, and here I am. So I find that I really love my name. I like how unique it is. And I really like that I have a permanent connection to the women in my family who, from whom I am descended.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I ask those questions because, and not just because you're a museum educator, but as I was saying before, I think a lot of times we know surface things about people, but we really don't know their story and their roots, and then how that impacts how they show up in the world. And sometimes things just start to click when you understand where someone is coming from. I remember one person that I was interacting with, I really liked them, but there was just a way about them, and then I learned where they were from, and I was like, oh, okay, I got you. I got you. Now I understand your communication style. I understand your directness. We're good. We're good.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was like, I get it. I get it. Right. So I do appreciate that. And I think that question is helps us really understand a person. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, and being from California is important to me. I haven't lived there for a long time, unlike most Californians who don't ever leave. But I do think it can shape how people interact with me if they know that I'm from California and now I live in Virginia. But I like to think that I have done my due diligence to prove to Virginians that I care about this place too.
You. Yeah, yeah. The regional differences. Yeah, that is very important. Is I always say to people, I always lead with like I'm a Black Southern woman. And that I think that really shapes a lot of like my qualities and like you're saying, like etiquette, how I talk to people. As I was saying, you could be direct, but you just gotta put a little sugar on it, right? Right? It's like I'm gonna tell you, but I'm a couch and a little love, right?
Mhm.
And that is important. Okay. Given that and learning your background a bit more, what in your childhood or upbringing inspired your interest in studying American history and culture?
So, I don't tell a lot of people this right away, but my mom is a writer. She's a pretty well-known novelist. Not like super famous, but she's well known. And so I grew up with a storyteller mother. She writes novels about Black history mostly. And so I grew up with somebody who really valued story and who really valued history. And then my dad, he never finished his college degree, but he loves American history. He loves learning, and both of them really love stories. And so I think I've always loved history since like the earliest books I read were baby versions of historical fiction. But uh but museums came, my mom took us to a lot of museums. We went to a lot, and I always felt like they were these like really special places of knowledge, but in ways that were accessible and fun. And I liked that I could go to a museum and I could learn with my family. Like we were all learning together, as nerdy as that sounds. So I have a very distinct memory of my mom taking us to the Huntington, which is one of my favorite museums. It's in Pasadena, California. And we we couldn't afford to like get food there because their cafe is pretty expensive. And so we like brought food in, and they were like, you can't bring food in here. And we were like, okay. So all of it, we like sat in a row on this like on the stairs on the to the entrance of the museum, and we were like, all right, I guess we're gonna eat our food here. But we had such a beautiful day, and that is like my earliest memory of being like, okay, I want to work in museums. So I've always loved history, but I think you can do with history lots of different things. So for me, the museum is the right place to do history. And I've been working in the field for a while now, so I think hopefully they'll let me stick around.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's connected to some really meaningful childhood experiences for you.
hmm hmm Yeah,
Excellent.
definitely.
Okay. And so with that, that you pursued a career as a museum educator, what are some milestones, positive or challenging, in pursuing your career in museum education?
It's hard, I've had some really beautiful moments. I've had some really hard moments too. So I started my career at a small African American history museum in Austin, Texas. It was a city-run museum. It still exists. I shouldn't use it as the past tense, but that was my first museum job. And I worked summer camp, so trying to wrangle a bunch of extremely unruly children through a museum is a difficult task, to say the least. But I just so there's this book that a lot of museum professionals talk about when they talk about why they decided to work in museums. It's called From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. Have you heard of it?
No, for the
So it's a young adult novel. It's from like 1950. And the premise is that there's these two kind of wealthy white kids who decide they're going to run away from their family. And they run away to the Met. And they live in the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, for like a while. And they sleep in all the beds in all the fancy rooms, and they like get to visit the mummies at night. And so like that feeling of being behind the scenes in the museum, the first one there, the only one there, is very important to me. And so that was a big milestone. The first couple times I was the first one in the museum or the last one in the museum where I felt like it was mine. That was really a big moment. And every museum I've gotten to have that. And it means a lot to me. And when I go into the fam and, I'm the first one there or the last one there, I say hi to all the ghosts and I thank them for letting me come around. But anyway, so that's a milestone for me. It's just getting to be in the museum like it's mine for a little while. Um, I worked in a lot of different capacities at museums. So I started as an educator. I did field trips and tours and volunteers and lectures and things like that. One time I did a talk at the Carver, my first museum, which was we showed a documentary about Fannie Lou Hamer, who's one of my favorite historical figures. And afterward, I was watching the crowd disperse and people were meeting each other and exchanging phone numbers. And I was like, I just created community. Just that. I just created community. And I was like, okay, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. And so that was also a big milestone for me, is feeling like I figured out the purpose. Like I love telling stories, I love history, I love museums, but the point of the work is for the people who come. It's not just the building, it's not just the stuff. And so that was a big deal to me. Um, and then, yeah, coming here. So I was in grad school for what felt like 1,000 years, was actually 6 years. And I worked at museums throughout. And one of the museums I worked at was the Harry Ransom Center, which is a big archive on the University of Texas campus. And I curated my first exhibit there. I co-curated with a friend, my friend Diana. And she came up with the title, which is, I'm still really proud of the title. It's Fugitive Findings, How Artists of Color Survive in the Archives. And the premise was that we were able to dig up, even though the archive didn't have a lot of stuff related to Black people specifically, but people of color in general, we were able to find things and put them together in a kind of cohesive narrative. And that was the first exhibit I curated, and that's when I knew I wanted to be a curator. So those are all big. And then coming here, my first exhibit at FAM, and then becoming VP, those are all huge to me. But also every day is big to me, you know. If I get one thing done, if I meet one new person, that feels great too. So it's a mix. Well, that was a long answer, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I did say, milestones, positive or negative and multiple. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the sort of understanding of when it clicked for you of like, oh, the point of this is building community, right? Beyond just telling the stories. And I've seen that already with you in the time that you've been here. You've been amazing at creating community, and I appreciate that about you.
Thanks.
Um,
It's a pleasure.
Also, too, yeah, that's funny about the museum. I don't know, do people now reference night at the museum as maybe a reason why?
They don't as much.
Okay.
Like you think people would say it to me all the time, but they really don't. I think it's because I work at a history museum, so they're like, that would just be creepy if everything came up. Because like, Night at the Museum is a natural history museum, so that's such a different experience. And if you're at a museum and like there's an auction block and that came to life, that would be terrifying.
Oh,
Whereas like
yeah,
if you're at
you don't, yeah,
Natural History Museum, a mammoth or whatever, that's awesome. So,
that's kind of cool. Yeah, yeah, that is a difference. Yeah, that would be very traumatizing.
yes, it would.
That would be very traumatizing.
Not to make light of it, I'm just saying like that, that's
No,
what's
I
at
can
my
understand why
museum.
they
So
make the connection. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And given that you were saying your experience in being in grad school, I'm gonna skip ahead one question.
Hmm.
And something I read, which, when I started to just read more about museum educators, that only 4% of museum educators are African American or Black. And I was just thinking, gosh, for this country to have such, for the roots to be so deep within the, African American history and culture and contributions, for there only to be 4% representation of the people curating the stories and, narrating the stories. Um, what has been your experience, and why do you think that exists? Why is there only that low percentage, 4%, in the museum education field?
Yeah, I mean, I've been the only Black person at a lot of museums. A lot. A lot of museums. And I mean, obviously I'm mixed race, so I recognize the privileges that I have as a light-skinned person, as a mixed race person, but I have been the only person of color at a lot of museums. It's a huge problem. I think there's a lot of reasons. I don't know if what I'm going to say is like the number one reasons, but these are some of the reasons that I think. One, I think a lot of people don't know that this is a job, which I think is fair. Like, it's not like it's something that is very visible to other people. I think people who come to museums think that the museum just like exists fully formed and there's nobody putting things on the wall. It just is there,
Mhm.
which I think is what museums have wanted people to think for a long time. But I am the opposite. I'm like, I want people to understand that there's a person doing this. So when you see the exhibit that I'm about to open, you'll see that I am in it. Like, not like to be a jerk, not like this is me, but like just like I am a person who curates what's on these walls. So anyway, I think that's one of the reasons is that people just don't know that it's a job, a gig. That's one reason. The second reason is it pays terribly. It pays so terribly, especially education. I am finally making pretty okay money now, but I have not in my entire career. And I've been in this career since I was 23. And when I came to FAM was the first time I've lived, I've been able to actually make a life off of what I've been paid. So I think that's a really big deal. Like, I think a lot of people leave the field or they just can't keep going. A
Mhm.
lot of people who are in museums, especially art museums, it's less with history, but art museums, a lot of people's partners make good money. And so that's how they can afford to work in the field. And that's not something that's available to a lot of people of color. Some people, but not a lot of people of color have that option. So those are some reasons. You don't need a PhD, but you do need further education. And if you, for instance, don't have any family money or family help and you get debt from your undergrad, why would you then want to go in debt for a master's and possibly for a PhD and then you'll be making $50,000 a year? It just doesn't really make a lot of sense for a lot of people, which I understand and respect.
Mhm.
And then finally, there's just good old-fashioned racism. I've had a lot of crappy things happen to me at museums, a lot of microaggressions, a lot of colleagues who haven't been particularly kind. And I've seen and known a lot of Black people who have been in museums who've left because of the crap that they dealt with. And it sucks. It really sucks, but it's a problem. And so the thing that I do is I mentor a lot of people. I have like 50 people that I'm mentoring because I really, really, really want more people of color, more Black people, more Black women in the field. And they don't have a lot of mentors because there's not a lot of us who are still going. You know, there's this amazing generation of Black women curators that, you know, are in their 60s and 70s and even 80s now, and they're incredible. And we have all benefited from their work. Faith Davis Ruffins is a particular hero of mine. She works for the National Museum of American History. She just died last year. Um, so I have been the beneficiary of a lot of great mentorship, but not a ton of Black women in the museum field because there just aren't that many. And so I have made it my mission to try to support people who are coming up in whatever ways that they need. But I can only do so much when they're still going to be the only one in the room. They're still going to be dealing with low pay. And now, of course, with the DEI becoming some kind of curse word, which is hilarious. You know, it's going to get worse, but the thing is, the thing that always makes me feel a lot better is they're Black museums. Black museums have always existed, it will always exist, and they almost always have almost all Black people working at them. So, you know, there are spaces where that are a little bit safer. There are spaces where people can thrive, but they don't have a ton of funding either. So it's complicated.
Mhm.
But I think my position, the curator of African American history, is a really amazing position. I've seen other positions like that out there, and so I'm hoping that that continues at different institutions to really hire people based on their skill set in Black history, in Black community, and make it as valuable as a PhD in European paintings, which sounds cool, but also, what we do has value too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you breaking that down. I think, yeah, people probably don't know. I know I didn't know as much about the kind of field of museum education. So
Mhm.
to then understand there is, challenges with opportunity, access, um, and pay, and then also dealing with, racism and I'm sure sexism as well, and just navigating that system and the value that is or isn't placed on telling the stories and history and culture of Black, African American, probably also Indigenous
Mhm.
folks as well. So Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for breaking that down. And it does sound similar as being someone who is in a, used to be in the educational field. It kind of sounds like a similar trajectory
Yep.
as well of you kind of hit a ceiling of, do I get more education? And then when does the pay start to
Yep.
level out with, with the debt? Yeah. So it seems
It's a big
similar
problem.
challenges. Yeah.
I think so. One of the things I try really hard to do is help people figure out how to network in ways that make sense to them. So, like, I know a lot of people don't like to go to conferences, hand out cards and things like that, and that's fine. Like, I can do that. It's fun, whatever. I try to help people figure out how they can network in ways that feel authentic and comfortable to them, because those relationships still are going to help them. So, if that means sitting down one-on-one or just like hanging out in a small group, you still have to network, but maybe you can do it, not you, people I mentor, they still have to network, but maybe they can do it in ways that are less intimidating. And then that way they can keep going. But, you know, it's a process.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think the power of making meaningful connections.
Hmm.
Mhm. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Okay, and then speaking of that, and speaking of your experience, kind of circling back to the theme of this leadership discussion series. So you've talked about this a bit, but how do you think being authentic and taking leaps of faith has informed um, how you approach your work?
I think, well, let's start with leaps of faith first,
Mhm.
because that's what I did, right? I finished on my PhD. I was in Austin, Texas. I'd lived there for 11 years. I saw this job posting, I applied to it, and then I got it. And then I was like, I guess I am moving my whole body to Fredericksburg, Virginia, a place I had never been to and had not even heard of before. And I did it, that was a huge leap of faith. Uh, but it just was right. I could feel that it was right. Um, it was terrifying at first, not the work, doing the work correctly. It's a very huge responsibility that I have at that museum. And so I take that very seriously. I'm a very silly, friendly person, so people don't always know how serious I am about the work, but I am deeply serious about the work. So I will never forget just being here in the first couple of months and just feeling terrified that I was gonna do something that would cause people harm. That's the thing I'm most afraid of. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of accidentally missing something or saying something or getting something wrong that would hurt the community that I'm supposed to be serving. So that's a huge leap of faith, right? That I could actually be the person who could do it. And that's where the authenticity comes in. So I recognize that I was not from here. I didn't know then how big a deal that is. I know it now. But when I came here, I didn't know how big a deal it was to hire an outsider to do this job, to
Mhm.
hire somebody not from Fredericksburg, not from Virginia, not even from the South. I'm from freaking California, man. And people do not like that sometimes. Uh, so I just talked a lot. I acknowledged who I was a lot.
Mhm.
I talked about who I was. I talked about my family. I talked about my light skin privilege. I talked about my mixed raceness. I talked about, having that PhD and how that doesn't give me, it gives me a kind of authority, but not the authority to like dictate what kinds of stories are told or what community needs. So I just talked a lot and tried to be really upfront about who I am and what I was trying to do. And I did a lot of listening, and I think it mostly worked. For the most part, people seem to be okay with me being here and doing the job. But so there was that first part, right? It was acknowledging my positionality and it was listening. But then if you want people to think you're an authentic person, though, you have to follow through. So then there was a lot of following through. There was a lot of, okay, this person asked me to do this thing. I'm going to do this specific thing that they asked me to do so I can prove to them that I will do the things that they asked me to do. And there was a lot of that. And there's still a lot of that every single day. I still do that. Um, but I think people can sense the care that I have for this place, these stories, these people. Um, There are parts of me that I don't share with, everyone who comes into the museum, but for the most part, I'm the person that I am at the museum is the person that I am at my house, and I think people can sense that. So I don't know. I don't think I do everything perfectly, but I know that I try really hard and I try really hard to listen, and so far it seems like it's going well.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I think it's a testament to you that, like I said, you've been here less than 3 years and you've developed so much, meaningful connections, but also the programming that you've done and the exhibits you've done so far. I remember our first connection was when you did the Black business tour downtown, and it was just amazing. It was so informative, and I had heard stories of, oh, there used to be a Black hotel, very popular, nationally popular Black hotel in downtown Fredericksburg. I'd heard that, but I didn't know the story behind it. I didn't know how many businesses there were. And so yeah, yeah, it was so enlightening. Um, Helped me sort of understand the Fredericksburg area even more. But also kind of put sort of almost like hope, but almost like a light under, I think, everybody that was there, that was like, wow, there were more Black businesses in 1940 than there are in 2025, or,
Yeah.
when it happened, 2024.
Yep.
And, there's, that is significant. So thank you for that. And just how
Yeah.
you approached it and how you interacted with everyone and the care you had for everyone as well, to make sure you're like, I don't want you to get hit by a car. Come on. Like you were
That's my real biggest fear. Oh my gosh.
you were definitely caring for us, and I appreciated that. But thank you. Thank you. I think people can definitely sense your level of commitment and engagement. Um, and the weight of telling the story, given there's so much story to be told that hasn't been told and
Yeah,
should
I
have been
mean,
told.
it's Fredericksburg has such great stories. But I also love history and I love stories, so I feel like I could find stories I'm into anywhere. But like Fredericksburg stories are they're great and they've all been waiting. Like, I feel like the stories are just have been waiting. I mean, people know them. I always make sure that I don't ever say that I'm the like person who discovered everything. I didn't. Lots of people have been knowing these things for a long time, but I think the stories were just waiting to get more focus and more attention. But I'm glad that is what you got, because that is one of my biggest goals, is that I can connect the past and the present for people in service of the future. So yes, how amazing that we had this Black business district at the 500 Block of Princess Anne. How devastating is it that it's not there? How amazing is it that we can support Joy at Foodie and Corey at Curativa and the folks at Pimenta? How amazing that we can do for them what we can't do for those other places. And how amazing that we can then support entrepreneurs who are just starting out too. Like that is our privilege that we get to do that. And I hope people see when they feel that loss of what was here and isn't here anymore. I hope that they can feel that and then think, okay, well, what can I do to make sure that we don't lose this stuff again or lose what we have now?
Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that. And so, given that, and given you're talking about the history, the richness of the culture in the Fredericksburg area, so you've been here a little over 2 years now. So, what have you learned about Fredericksburg's African American community and history that has been exciting or surprising to you?
Um, There's this guy, James Wilkins. I think I've talked to you about him before. I talked about him at the Black Businesses Tour. So he was enslaved, and I don't remember the year he was born off the top of my head. Sorry, I'm not that kind of historian. I'm not good at dates. But he was freed, and he's worked as a barber in the Farmers Hotel, which was at 800 Caroline Street. And later, he became the butler for President Tyler at the White House and then lived in Philadelphia for the rest of his life. So there are all these stories of Fredericksburg natives or Fredericksburg locals who have these like national ties in ways that are really fascinating to me. And I think that in Fredericksburg, a lot of people think about, you know, the founding fathers. They think George Washington. They think about Mary Washington, Hugh Mercer, all the big guys. And those people are really cool. But there's also all of these amazing stories about Black people who maybe, you know, weren't the first president of the United States, but had these like huge life trajectories that are really fascinating. So I love that. There's, oh yes, so this is something a more recent discovery. So at the Mary Washington House, I've built a good relationship with some of their curators. And so they asked me over because they had an object that they wanted to see if I wanted to take for our exhibit.
Mhm.
So I went over there and they had um, a guest book. So everyone who's ever visited Mary Washington House has been asked to sign a guest book. And in the early 20th century, there was a museum director who was very racist, and she made the Black people who visited the museum sign the back of the guest book. She segregated the guest book, which is an absurd thing to do. And honestly, sometimes I think racism is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I was like, what? What does that do to put names in the back of a book? But anyway, the fact that there were so many people who wanted to come to that house.
Mhm.
There are Black people in there from all over the country who they write their name, they write where they're from, and they're writing in the back of this book because this lady is racist. But the fact that they wanted to come and see that museum, they wanted to honor Mary Washington, they wanted to think about the founding of our country and this single mother who raised this kid that would go on to be so important to the US. Like, that is so beautiful to me that we have that record.
Mhm.
The fact that it was that cruel, the fact that they had to be forced to sign the back of the book, and the fact that they had to be humiliated in that way makes me very angry. But the fact that they wanted to go is really beautiful to me because it shows that Black people have always been invested in public history and memory work.
Mhm.
And it sucks that they weren't always given the care that they deserved in museums. They still aren't given the care that they deserve at a lot of museums. But when they come to my museum, they're going to get the care that they deserve always. And if they don't, then somebody's going to have a problem and they're going to have to talk to me about it, you know?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a surprise to me. But it's an interesting story. It's a bittersweet one, I think. So I feel both very sad that that happened to them and very proud that they wanted to do that, that they went to that museum.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, there's absolutely no logic in racism, none. Um,
So dumb.
and yeah, and I guess from that we do get a record of the specific um Black visitors. So you do get that information that you probably wouldn't have gotten if, she didn't segregate.
It's true because they could have just been in there. We wouldn't have known that they were Black.
Right. Now
So
you
it's
know,
like,
yeah. And then there's
yep.
stories to be told about them, but it also speaks to, gosh, it just speaks to how strong they are and how resilient and how it was like, we're going to keep going despite
Yep.
um super ignorant,
Yep.
people.
Yep. Yep.
And it's not our problem, it's their problem.
It's
We're
their
still going
problem.
to come here and do what we need to do.
Yep. Exactly.
Woo, woo.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I come across stories like that every day. It's very intense.
And it's a testament, I think, sometimes to build our kind of fortitude because we come for such like strong people. And
That's
we're here because of them.
exactly it. That's how I get through this present moment that we're in.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I study history. Do you know what they've tried? You know how many times they've tried to get rid of Black people? Do you know how many times they've tried to get rid of Black stories, Black history? It's not going to happen. It's literally not going to happen. You can't do it. This place does not exist without Black people. So yeah.
Yeah. We're we're too intertwined, intermeshed.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are the foundation. So I have a couple more questions, but I do want to open it up a bit since we are a smaller group, for some questions from the group. So, because you've said so much and so much insightful information. So thank you for that. I do have one question in the chat from Lisa. Um, is FAM federally funded in any way? Are all Fredericksburg elementary schools required to go on the tour?
Thank you for that question, Lisa. So the first is we do get some federal funding, but only from the grants. So we are in a really weird pickle right now because we got a big grant for Juneteenth from the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, and then we've heard nothing. So we don't know if we're getting the money, and it's very confusing and stressful. The good thing is that federal grants are horrible and so much work that we almost never apply to them. It is our laziness that is saving us in the end. So we had one NEH grant that we got in 2023, and we've gotten all the money from that one. And then we had this Juneteenth one, which it's looking like we're not going to get the money from it, even though we got it, which is pretty sad because we worked really hard on it. But for the most part, our funding we get a little bit of funding from the city, but all the rest of our funding comes from private donors. So that is good and bad in many ways. It's good because we're not affected by what is happening in the federal government right now for the most part. It is bad because we're always hustling, right, for money. And so, um, it's a balance. I've worked at a lot of different museums, funded in a lot of different ways, and this is the first independent museum that I've worked for. But there are some really good things about it, and I do feel really grateful that we are not completely beholden to the federal government right now. That is for sure. So that's the answer to the first question. The second question is they're not required. We see a lot of Fredericksburg schools, and it's free for Fredericksburg schools to come to our museum for tours. So we do charge for field trips from outside of Fredericksburg. We see a lot of kids, but we only have one full-time educator. And so she literally cannot be everywhere at once. As cool as that would be. So we try really hard to hit as many grades as we can. We do specialized programs for different grades based on the standards, the SOLs, for the standards of learning for Virginia. So for example, we did when we had the Lafayette exhibit, we went out to the schools and taught the kids about the Revolutionary War and about the Marquis de Lafayette, and we hit all fifth graders for all of elementary schools in Fredericksburg. So we're getting a lot of kids. They're not all coming into the museum, but we go there sometimes. But we're still trying to make sure we're hitting even more. So it's my dream for there to be a field trip in the museum every single day in the spring, but we'll see if we get there. We're getting somewhere, and we're gonna keep going, but not yet. Not yet can I say they're all required to come on tour, but maybe in a year or two I'll have been able to figure that out.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any more questions for Gaila before we ask a couple more questions about the work she's doing currently?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Hi, Gayla. I've been sitting here eating my dinner, so
I hope it's delicious.
it has been. The question I met you not quite 2 weeks ago at one of the Thursday night um events. So
Mhm.
the question I have is, what are your future plans? What do you see on the 12-month horizon?
Thank you for that question. It's nice to see you.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I have been working towards this exhibit since my first day at the museum, and this exhibit opens at the end of May, and that is the culmination of the work that I've been doing. So when I got to Fredericksburg, there was a memorandum of understanding between the city and the museum for the creation of my position. So it outlined all the stuff I was supposed to do. And with this exhibit opening, I will have done everything that I was supposed to have done. Um, there's lots and lots of stuff that I can still do. There's multiple exhibits that are in process right now. I still want to add some more wayside panels throughout the city. I still have lots of programming that I want to do. But I also think that this is a good time for me to reflect on what I've done here. It'll be 3 years that I've been in Fredericksburg this June, and I have been running. I have been running. I have been working so hard since I got here. I I work very hard. I know lots of Black women say that, and I think that a lot of us do. I work really hard, and so I want to take some real time to think about what we've done, think about what we've accomplished, to process what this has meant to me personally. And I have a book contract. So I signed a contract with LSU Press, and I'm supposed to be writing a book based on my dissertation and the work that we're doing in Fredericksburg. So my dissertation is about how state history museums interpret the history of slavery. So the book is supposed to be basically like starting with the research that I did and the issues that I identified at these museums, and then how we address these issues at FAM. A little bit of a how-to guide to doing good community-based curatorial work. And so the back half of this year, I got to write that thing, or else they're going to make me give the money back. So, so my plan is I'm going to take a month of work off. I'm not going to look at my email. Maybe that's a lie, probably, but in theory, I'm going to go visit my new nephew. I'm going to write. I'm going to think and rest a little, and then see what's next. I really love it here, and I feel very close to this community, but I also am not from here. So, I have to be thinking about if I need to be closer to my family, if I want to stay here. I love it here, but there's this new being in the world that I got to go hang out with. So we'll see. I have to spend some time thinking about what my life looks like outside of just work. Yeah. I'm being very honest. It's hard to do that. I want to be like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. But I don't know. I don't think I will, but I want to give myself some space and some room.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have fun at the event?
I did. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Good. I'm excited for May. I don't know what we're doing yet. Hopefully it won't be weird. It might be.
I have a question. I didn't know. Can you explain how long the Black History Museum has been in Fredericksburg? I
No,
remember years ago they were going to do one in Fredericksburg, but then it was hold on.
you're good.
Hold on. I'm sorry. He
You're
doesn't
totally
know.
good.
I'm in a meeting.
So
How long it was? I don't remember when this happened.
yeah,
And I
so there was supposed to be a slavery museum in Fredericksburg. That was
right.
in the 2000s is when that was going on. It was supposed to be created by Governor Wilder.
Yeah. I'm
And
sorry.
I don't know exactly what happened, but the project fell apart. So they did put some stuff up. They put some panels up, but the project fell apart. And so I'm not connected to that project. So my role started with the auction block conversation. So in 2017, Vice Mayor Charlie L. Fry Jr., brought it to a vote, and he asked City Council to move the auction block from where it was in downtown Fredericksburg to the museum. So they started this whole, community-wide conversation about what to do about the auction block, but also how Black people were feeling about how they were represented within the city, and especially in terms of history in the city. And so after all those conversations, they realized that they needed a dedicated person to lead the African American history efforts in the city and to interpret the auction block. So my position was created. It was created in 2020, but they didn't hire until 2022. So I have been in the city since 2022, and I work at the museum as the curator of African American history, but the museum's not a Black history museum. It's a general history museum but every day that I'm there, I think that I bring more Black history into it. So maybe eventually it will just be a Black History Museum. Don't tell people I said that. Yeah, so I am not connected to the Wilder project, but I do think it's a really interesting, it would have been a really interesting project to see come to fruition. And it's
Mhm.
really sad that it didn't. But I also think it would have been a much different purpose than my purpose in Fredericksburg. I think they would have been trying to do much more kind of national slavery history, and I'm really focused on local history, and I really
Mhm.
like that part of my job. So I think it could have been interesting. Maybe I would have worked there if that had actually happened, but for now, I think it's a good compromise to have me as part of the mainstream museum.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I have a couple more questions to wrap up? But yeah, I do recall when there were talks about the slavery museum, and you're right there, and Central Park has built up so much, but there was a time where they did have a couple of, I don't know if they were yeah, there was something they had started to build
Yeah.
some things, and now currently was what is probably, what would it be now? It's probably
It's out
like a,
behind the ballpark.
okay.
Yeah, I've had people go find try to find them, and
Hmm.
I'm like, be careful of snakes, guys.
Okay.
But yes, I've heard there's still some panels out there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but the project doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's an
I
interesting.
remember I remember the stakes and I even remember the signs and everything
Hmm.
that used to be there.
Yeah,
And so like really excited about it and then like nothing. So
yeah,
then they said funding and then they said the money that the land was bought from underneath them for the park.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
yeah.
so
It
money
would have been a
talk.
really cool project to see, definitely. But hopefully we can capture some of it at the museum where I am now.
Okay, given that you were talking about the exhibit that's coming up in May,
Mhm.
I know it's opening May 30th. Can you talk a bit more about that, what that exhibit will be, and how we can engage with it, how the public can engage with it?
Yes, so the exhibit is called Living Legacies, African American History in the Fredericksburg Area.
Mm.
It is a comprehensive African American history exhibit, so it starts during the enslavement period and comes all the way to today. It's divided into 4 zones. So the way that I do my work generally is that it's chronological, but I pull out specific themes within the chronology because I think it's boring if you're just like, and then in 1812 this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. So what I try to do is, um, that works for some people. It's not how I do my history, but it works for some people. Um, I identify themes that I want to hit in each zone. So, for example, in this exhibit, it's divided into 4 zones. The first zone is the enslavement era. So it focuses on the colonial, revolutionary, and antebellum periods. And within that, we have sections about enslaved resistance, so the ways that enslaved people resisted in Fredericksburg and the surrounding areas. We talk about women's labor specifically, but also just the different kinds of labor that enslaved people were forced to do. We talk about both, the kind of like plantation labor, where we're talking about tobacco, wheat, corn, those kinds of things, but also more specialized skills like blacksmiths and cooks, things like that. So that's the first section. We also have a section that I'm really proud of called The Paperwork of Slavery. This is something I've been thinking about since grad school. When we think about the institution of slavery, it existed and thrived because of the combination of bureaucracy and violence. So you can't just have a bunch of lawyers making laws, right? You need to have physical violence and intimidation to underscore that. But you also can't just have physical violence and intimidation. You have to have a kind of infrastructure that supports an institution like slavery. So I'm trying to get people to understand all of the different ways that the bureaucracy of Virginia worked to support the institution of slavery. Which sounds very boring when I say it like that, but hopefully will be more compelling when you see some of the paperwork, the documents that we have. So that's the first zone. The second zone is Civil War and Reconstruction. So we talk about John M. Washington, who's super famous. We see he was one of the first people to cross the Rappahannock River and self-emancipate in 1862. We have a section that I'm really excited about that I think is not going to be as... So this exhibit is me putting all the work that I've been doing for the last 15 years into practice. So we're trying to, yep, there it is. I'm trying to get people to understand both the kind of facts about Black history in Fredericksburg, but also how you do research, how you do Black history research. It's not as easy as people might think it is. And so I'm trying to get people to see how you can read documents to learn about Black history, even if you don't have a lot of information. So for example, we have, this is it. This is what we've been working on. We have a section that is about Jane Beale. So Jane Beale was a white woman who lived in Fredericksburg during the Civil War. She wrote a journal, which was later published. There's John in Washington right there. Her journal was later published as a book, and it's called A Woman in a War-Torn Town. So it's all about this white woman's experience of the Battle of Fredericksburg. When you read it, though, you realize that you can learn a little tiny bit about some of the people that she enslaved from her writing. So I pull out sections of the diary so that we can try to figure out what she calls them servants, what they were doing, what they were trying to figure out during the Civil War. And in that way, we can get a glimpse of what civilian life was like for Black people during the war. So I'm trying to get people to understand not only like the surface level facts, which are important, but also how do you do research? How do you understand these stories? How do you find this information? So that's zone 2. Zone 3 is it's the period of segregation. But one of the things I try really hard to do in my work is balance both the pain and the violence of Black history with the ingenuity and resilience of Black community. And so in that section, there are Jim Crow laws are dictating where people can do anything, right? But Black people are also building churches and schools and social organizations and businesses. So showing that even when they're not allowed to, sit at the front of the bus or whatever, they're still able to build these incredible institutions. So that's zone 3. And then zone 4, comes all the way up to the present. So we're going to talk about the protests that took place in the city between 2016 and 2020. We're talking about the work that we've been doing at the museum related to Black history. We're talking about the auction block and contemporary leaders and area nonprofits. And really thinking about what does progress look like? The progress of the civil rights era is that schools were integrated, but what problems did that then create, or how have people grappled with those issues? So we have a lot of individual stories that will be on display. So the way that people can participate, if they're so interested, if you scroll down a little bit more, Greta, you might have it there. Yes, so we're gonna have a community gallery wall. Can you go up a little bit more? And so in this area, we're just gonna have amazing portraits of Black people in Fredericksburg. So you can share your images of your own family, your kids, you at work, whatever you're interested in. And then we'll be able to frame them and put them on display in the exhibit. And if you do it after the exhibit opens, that's okay, because we're gonna have a slideshow going on 2 different screens in that section. And the point of that section, thank you, Michelle, is that we're showing a lot of heavy hitters in the exhibit, right? The John M. Washington, the Reverend Davies, the Judge John Scott, people who are really famous and well known in the area. But that's not all Black community in Fredericksburg. It's everybody. And I want to show that everybody's included in our stories and in our exhibit. So I'm really excited about the gallery wall. And the opening will be May 30th, and we're having a huge party, so everybody needs to come and hang out with me, and eat some food with me. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. I'm very excited. That's Marguerite Young right there. And I just got her. So one of the things I do is if I talk about a person whose family is still here in Fredericksburg or who's still alive, I make sure that they look at the panel to make sure they don't get mad at me for whatever's on there. Yes, Lisa, I do actually. I've given talks at old site and new site in the last couple months to make sure that people know that this exhibit is coming and that we really would love to celebrate their stories too. So I'm doing my best to get the word out there, but hopefully all of you on this call will also share it with your networks because I really want people to know that this work is happening. I'm not trying to make it about me and what I've accomplished, but I want community to know that they asked the city to concentrate more fully on Black history, and the city is doing what they asked, but that it's always the community that's been the foundation of all the work. Yeah. It's exciting.
Thank you. Absolutely exciting. More than just exciting, this is like, yeah, this is, I don't know, I want to say spiritual. This is like soul work. It really is.
It is. I really feel that way. I feel like my work is magical, like not because I'm doing it, but because of the care and the cool stories and the way that people come together. It's really beautiful. Um, yeah, we started painting last week, so the gallery is happening. It's getting yellow in there. The exhibit is yellow and purple because those are my favorite colors. And all my exhibits are purple and yellow so far. So our operations director said I'm not allowed to pick colors anymore after this exhibit.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions about the exhibit? And I think in general, how can we support? I did see a link on that that says donate. I think you can donate to the actual exhibit. I'm sure you can donate to Fredericksburg Area Museum. But are there any specific ways you want that is best for this exhibit and for the work of like the African American history and programming to support that? Would be helpful specifically for that as well?
I mean, donations are super helpful and appreciated. Even like small ones, like $10 a month, really means a lot to us, especially when you say that you're doing it to support Black history. I'm trying to prove to my boss, who is amenable, he's not like fighting with me about it, but I'm trying to prove to him that if we can get a lot of smaller donors to support us like monthly, then it's a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of that community investment means a lot, right? So that kind of funding is helpful if you do like a recurring donation of $10 a month. If you join as a member, so those are individual or family memberships, and then you get like discounts and you get free drink tickets for things. Those things are helpful. Like coming to our stuff is just really great because it shows like we can prove that we have good numbers. Then that shows that we're doing our work well, you know? And then, just like sharing stuff on social media is super helpful. I saw Lisa's question. We don't get any money from the state, like officially, but we do get grants from Virginia Humanities, which is the humanities, like organization for the state of Virginia. So we did get some money from the state of Virginia for the Living Legacies project. But it's a grant, so we had to apply still. It's not like it just comes for no reason, which would be awesome, but it doesn't. So yeah, and the Virginia Humanities just got their funding cut by the federal government. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future of that organization. It might not even exist anymore because they get the vast majority of their funding from the federal government. But yeah, any amount of donations is helpful. Any amount of showing up is helpful. And just telling people that we're doing the work is helpful.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? We have a few more minutes. Any other questions for Gaila? No, it's
I've
just
talked so much, they're tired of me listening to me talk.
no, it's totally exciting. I'm sure they're just taking it all in. They're processing the amazing work that's happening, and they're just thinking about ways that they can share it with the community. I'm
I
sure.
have a question. The Living Legacies exhibit, is that going to be a permanent exhibit?
So we don't do any permanent exhibits at FAM, which I actually really like because that means stuff can't get stale because it's not going to be there forever, but it's going to be there for 3 years at least.
Okay.
So that's as long as we do. Like 3 years is pretty much as long an exhibit as we do. So, but of course that also depends on what the future looks like, right? Because if we suddenly don't have a lot of money, then we can't do new exhibits. So maybe it will be forever, but we'll see. But at least 3 years is the plan. And it's right, I think you know this already, Michelle, but it's right when you walk in, it's going to be our big signature exhibit. So it'll be people's introduction to the museum is the Black history.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. If there's no other questions, I will share this full recording on my YouTube channel. So it's YouTube at Collaborative Change Greta Como. So the full interview will be there. Also, I'll share I usually do some clips from the interview, some powerful moments. We have many powerful moments from this interview. So thank you so much, Gaila. I'll share them on my social media on like LinkedIn and Facebook. And once in a while, I'll post on Instagram too. But if you follow me on these platforms, then you'll get all the information about this interview, the previous ones I've done with amazing women from the series, and any ones I do for the future. So probably going to wrap up the series for the summer. I may do one in May or June. I'm not sure yet. And then I'll wrap up and then start again probably in September. Also too, if you have any interest in working with me to work with your team to, like I said, focus on those key interpersonal issues that may block your group from being effective, then you can go to my website and we can talk about my services, your goals and outcomes for your group, and then, talk about how I can be compensated for that. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gaila. I just want to thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the community. Yeah, the programs I've been to have been just so insightful, pivotal, and it's really resonated with me. And that has been the case, I think, with other people in the community as well. And I just so appreciated your kindness and your connection to building community. It's very key and very clear that that's what you're doing. So I appreciate you tremendously.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Greta. Ooh, a Black History banquet? Let's do it. Well, we'll start with the big exhibit opening and go for there. How about that?
Would be great.
Thank you, Greta, for having me. Thank you to all the people who joined. I feel like I think I know almost all of you, so I'm just happy that I got to talk to you all. And Greta, I'm very thrilled and happy to support you and the work that you're doing too. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And I'll be in contact with you and sharing this video and information from Living Legacies. I'll share some links with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gaila. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.